Tonight we've got a Q&A. We've got about 8 or 10 talking points and questions, most of which have been submitted by OLL community members. Benga says, what games have been the opposite of what you expected, for better or worse? So have you ever played a game and it's been completely different to what you thought it was going to be when you bought it?
Yes.
Any examples?
Breath of the Wild comes immediately.
Breath of the Wild was going to be different to what they had shown of it.
It might have been a good Zelda game.
Oh, we knew that was going to occur.
Didn't even move my mouth. They stripped so much out of what made a Zelda game good for me that I was just expecting, instead of it being a condensed kind of map where you literally go from temple to temple, I was expecting maybe an Assassin's Creed with actual worthwhile temples bolted on and worthwhile missions within that world or something like that. I don't know really what I was after, but yeah, no. That was that. There's loads others, but that's the only one that comes to mind right now.
Something that I got, which I wouldn't have bought it normally, but we got it for the cafe. Star Wars. Can't even remember what it's called now. Fallen Order, the most recent Star Wars game, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. An actual EA Star Wars game. The fact that it was a Star Wars game for one and an EA game for two, after the nightmare of Battlefront and all the issues that they had with that. I was pleasantly surprised with Fallen Order because it was a full-on single-player campaign, just a third-person action adventure. It was a little bit padded in places, a little bit repetitive in places. It's certainly not a 10 out of 10. You know, it's an 8 out of 10 for me. But it's something where I was expecting it to be decidedly average, and I was actually really impressed by it. So yeah, I would say Star Wars would be a good example for me. Anything for you, Ash?
I have two examples. I have one that was better than I thought and one that was worse than I thought. The one that was better than I thought was actually Final Fantasy XIV, because I originally tried to play it on the console with a controller, and I picked the wrong class. It wasn't really fun. I wasn't really enjoying it. And then I started playing it on PC, and it's so much better than I thought it was. And the one that turned out worse than I thought was The Sims 4, because I loved The Sims 3. There was so much extra stuff, like you had the creator style where you could put your own patterns and stuff in. You had so many more hair options. Everything was so much more customizable. And they stripped The Sims 4 back so much that the original base game didn't even come with swimming pools and toddlers, which had been in the game for years beforehand. And it was so disappointing.
Oh. Emily says Xenoblade 2, in a good way, was surprising. Just trying to rack my brains to think of anything else now. I'm thinking back to my youth. And I know we go on about how old we are, Bill. But back in the day...
Don't bring me into this!
Alright, that's just me then. But back in the day where all you had to go on when you bought a game was either, tiny screenshots on the back of the packaging, which in many cases weren't even for the same console as what that particular game was for, or it would be things in magazines that you'd read and you'd only seen still images, and so it was always a gamble whenever you bought a game, wasn't it, back in the 90s? And I would say probably the original Final Fantasy VII was a gamble for me, because I'd never really played anything like it. And I really didn't know what to expect at all, and it turned out to be my favourite game of all time.
Okay. I'd probably, to do the other way round, because I was just being quite negative, and I don't like being negative, the one that was a gamble was Pikmin.
Oh, yeah.
Because the only thing that had to go on, it was made by the guy who made Mario, and I was like, I like Nintendo, I like Mario, I like Zelda, I like everything this guy's ever done, but Pikmin looks absolutely terrible. The screenshots look terrible. The trailers look terrible. So I took a gamble and got it. And actually, the Pikmin series, even though every time I do Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3, and I go, oh God, another one. But every time I play that game, I'm pleasantly surprised, and I really enjoy it. So,
all right. Emily says Popils needs to be on this list. Everyone needs to go and play Popils on the Game Gear, and you will understand how amazing it is. No, Ash? Okay.
Got to try it just to experience it.
Fanata says they like every game they play and they look forward to every game I buy. That's a true game fan there. Cake for All, didn't know you were a fan of Final Fantasy VII, John. Yep. And
the poster in the background doesn't really help matters.
To be fair, I've got and literally all you can see on my shelf is actually all my Final Fantasy stuff. So yeah. Kizra said they were worried Final Fantasy XIV would be tricky to play on a console, but they actually made it work quite well with a controller. And
is it cross-platform Final Fantasy XIV?
It is.
Yeah.
I do promise that I will get to it at one point. At some point, I will. Right, let's move on to our next question, which is from Fanata. And Fanata says, and again I'm going to paraphrase the question because it was quite a long question. In fact, Fanata on Discord sent about 8 questions, so I picked one. Now that new consoles have supposedly eliminated loading screens, what are your most memorable loading screens? Can you think of any? Apart from Mass Effect elevators.
I can. So there's when you made a family in The Sims 2, the loading screen to get into the game would be a picture of the family and a load of icons behind that would all light up in order. And I used to play The Sims 2 on a really naff laptop that was never meant to run games. And the reason why this loading screen is so memorable for me is because I would have to sit and watch it to make sure it wasn't frozen. So it's like burnt into my memory.
Wow. I think a load screen that I quite enjoyed was the Skyrim ones. And I know I'm only saying that because I played Skyrim recently. But you just get all the character models on the loading screens and you can zoom in and see like all the crazy detail on them and stuff. The only problem is, because I played it most recently on the Series X, the loading is pretty much instant and you never really got a chance to actually see anything very well. But other than that, I would have to go with the classic answer of Ridge Racer on the original PlayStation, where you got to play like a version of Galaxian while it was loading up. And it clearly didn't take that long to literally load the most basic menu in the world, as Ridge Racer had. It was there, I think, more just as a little gimmick, rather than something to really mask the loading. But yeah, little Galaxian loading screens were brilliant. But Namco, now I think about it, the reason you don't get any form of like games on loading screens is because Namco have the original patent for it from Ridge Racer, which is why no games put little mini games on their loading screens, generally speaking. Bill.
So now John's stolen my pick and also all my facts that I was going to mention.
There you go. I was there. I didn't realise that you had that planned to say, Bill. Sorry, dude.
No, it's fine. They did it with Star Fox as well, you see, because when they did their Star Fox games. But apart from that, because I agree, I think I played Galaxian more than I did Ridge Racer at one point, because it was just, I went, oh yeah, I'll put in Ridge Racer, I'm supposed to be playing that. The other ones were Phantasy Star Online, because there was lots of loading screens in there, and they gave you little play around with the background type mini games as such. And they had different loading screens depending where you would go. They were just quite nice to look at. That was it, really. I'm glad they're gone.
They're not gone.
Loading.
They're gone for now, but as soon as a game now will have more data, because there will just be bigger games now, those loading screens will come straight back. I can't accept...
They're actually just really cleverly disguised. Specifically things like Ratchet and Clank, where you have the new one that's coming out where they have the grapple hook and it pulls it towards you. That's just a loading gate. And then you've got the bits in the Tomb Raider games where Lara Croft has to squeeze through a crack. That's just a loading gate. That's a way of disguising the loading screens. So they're not gone, they just are more integrated.
That's why a lot of third-person games now have that, sort of baked animation of crawling through a gap. You see that in Uncharted, Final Fantasy Remake, The Last of Us. They all do that, don't they? So
it's like the doors in Resi.
Yes.
Yeah, God of War was the first one to do it.
Was it?
They invented it. That's why all their corridors, when you're walking from place to place, is like an S shape to make it longer for you to get round it. So ever since they started it, everybody else used it. But again, going from Super Nintendo to N64 and not having to experience PlayStation loading screens, I was really annoyed when that became the norm and everything had loading screens. So I'm glad when developers get smart and disguise them like you guys say, or if they're gone altogether, that's great for me.
Yeah. Fanata says, as someone that owns a PS5, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Fanata's never seen a loading screen on his PS5.
Do you not have to install games?
I suppose, yes, you do still have to do that.
Then Fanata, you're lying, aren't you?
Hyconic says, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a lot of solid ones. Just trying to think what they look like. Oh, they're like sort of old school sepia images, aren't they? And they start out as an image and then they kind of morph into the actual world image, which is pretty cool. Awesome stuff. Right. Well, we put that question to bed pretty quick, didn't we? Right, Rob asks, with Crash Bandicoot's cartoon series apparently cancelled, what game would work well as a cartoon that hasn't already been done?
That hasn't already been done?
Yeah.
Does it have to be for kids?
It could be anything you want, Bill.
I'd like a Metroid cartoon.
Ooh, like a serious, dark, anime style thing, or are we talking like kids?
Yeah,
fun?
I'd like a proper Metroid cartoon for anime fans. So I'd be well up for that.
Yeah, that could be quite good actually.
Yeah.
All right.
Loads of blood, loads of gore. Go
Anything
for
for you, Ash, our resident anime expert?
I'm still thinking.
Okay. I would like to see. I mean, there's a lot of like.
All Star Fox.
Star Fox would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be good too. They did that for Wii U, didn't they? Did you watch the kind of cartoon they released for the Wii U?
No.
Before they did, they gave you a playable demo of Star Fox Zero, but they had like a half-an-hour cartoon to introduce the game, and it looked really good, and it was actually really good. But yeah, that would be my second pick, Star Fox.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of older properties, like 16-bit type things, where you can have a cartoon. I'm thinking along the lines of like Streets of Rage, where we had the animated cutscenes in the new Streets of Rage 4. I think that could work quite well as like a little mini series. I'd watch that for sure. Any thoughts, Ash?
So I can't think of a specific game. Maybe the chat can help me out. But I'd want something that was like an anime, but a shoujo anime. So a bit more like Sailor Moon or Card Captors. I think like some of the fighting games would lend themselves really well to that. I just cannot for the life of me think of one that would. But yeah, just something a bit lighter and fluffy, because anime doesn't always have to be dark and ghoulish. So
okay. Talking about
like a Raven Rabbids.
Well, not necessarily Raving Rabbids. I was thinking more of like a magical girl type anime.
Oh, I thought you meant like a like dark and scary Raving Rabbits. No, all right. Did Kirby have a series? Did Kirby have an animated series?
Yes, Kirby.
Really?
Did.
Do you know what it's called? Or was it just called Kirby?
I think it was just called Kirby. It was, again, on the DS and Wii kind of anime channel before it all disappeared. And they released some of them on cartridges for Toys R Us, but that was probably one of the reasons that Toys R Us came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, that's just totally gone.
It was pretty good, actually. It's pretty good.
I thought there is anime. I'm just Ash mentioned fighting games. There are, I think there's a number of animated features, isn't there, for fighting games? I'm sure Street Fighter's probably had a few. I know Tekken's had a couple as well. I don't know if Mortal Kombat has had anything animated, but obviously we've got new movies and stuff, haven't we? Loads of cool stuff coming.
Yeah, most fighting games get like something animated or something in the story, even if it's like a one-off or a short thing. But the latest Mortal Kombat one was like the history of Scorpion, which was actually really good and really gory. So they do tend to do them, but similar to what they do with Persona, they don't really sort of go all in. But the only people it seem to be is Warner Brothers. If Warner Brothers ever get involved in any kind of animated stuff, they tend to actually do a good job.
All right then. Cool. Next question, which is from me. Of your top 3 games or top selection of games of all time, what is the most recent? And I ask because I'm. In another way of asking it, is it possible for a game now to still impress you as much as something that did in your youth? What's the most recent, like real top tier game?
Do you want to go first, Ash?
Are we going on game release date or when I played it?
When you played them.
Okay, so most recent is obviously going to be Final Fantasy 14, because I love that game so much. But then after that, it was Dragon Age Inquisition, which are both quite modern games, because you say, can a modern game still impress you as much as it did in your youth? John, I'm still a youth. So, yes.
Okay.
That is that one, didn't you, John?
So, I mean, for me, with the exception of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I don't think you can really count remakes because they carry such a high nostalgia factor. And when it comes to the 7 Remake, if you're mad about the original, then generally speaking, you'll appreciate the remake a lot more than someone coming in blind to the remake, because there's certainly failings with the remake. But for me, my most recent top game that I've played would probably be Mass Effect 2. But before that, all my favourite stuff, is all 90s. There's very little. Maybe Tony Hawk's, I suppose. What's that? Early 2000s. But it's very hard now for a new game to come out and be at that, as technically marvellous as a brand new game may be, it doesn't do enough for me to become, like an all-time favourite. And the reason I ask is because I didn't know if is that a nostalgia thing, is it an age thing, or is it genuinely that games are just not as creative as perhaps they used to be? I don't know.
I'm slowly beginning to learn as I get older that you can't say if you're being nostalgic yourself. You need somebody else to go through a similar experience and then tell you whether you're being nostalgic. I think that's the only way you can be fair. But my top 3 games of all time are Zelda Twilight Princess, Xenoblade Chronicles, now Definitive Edition, and Smash Bros. Ultimate, which have all come out quite recently compared to what they were before.
Yes.
However, apart from Xenoblade Chronicles, which have got a little bit of a story to tell, Zelda Twilight Princess is more of a rehash of ideas from Zelda Ocarina of Time. So I could be being nostalgic there. And Smash Brothers is just a formula they rehash with nostalgic characters in it. Mm-hmm. So I could be being nostalgic there. But with Xenoblade Chronicles, when that first came out on the Wii, it came out at an interesting time where I was going through that similar thing that you were saying, John, where I was just like, do you know what? All these new consoles are coming out, nowhere near as good as what they used to be. I'm not liking any of them. I'm thinking about getting rid of them all and just keeping what I really want. Then I played Xenoblade Chronicles, and that game reminded me what I thought a good game is. And then when they released the Definitive Edition, all those feelings came right back again on how to make a remastered game. So I do think there's an aspect of you have to find the right game, and the market is so saturated now with so many games, unlike when we were kids and you only got what either your mum got you or what you were lucky to get in the second-hand store. There's so many games to play, and they're so much longer than what they used to be when we were kids. It's more about you need to work harder to find the game that actually is going to give you that feeling again, that you're actually going to like it, rather than playing what everybody else tells you should be good, because otherwise you'll be playing, Call of Duty all your life and maybe Last of Us 2 or whatever else is out there that is mainstream AAA.
I think like the Naughty Dog stuff is a good example, isn't it? Because the Naughty Dog games are technically incredible games. I think whether or not you agree with design choices and whatever in The Last of Us and whatever, but on a technical level, the Naughty Dog games are probably some of the best games ever made. And I think that they are fantastic games, generally speaking, all of the ones that I've played, and I I think I've played just about all of the Naughty Dog stuff in recent years. But none of it, I would say, is in my top 10. As amazing and impressive as the Uncharted and Last of Us series are and stuff, I don't consider them as some of the greatest games of all time. Whereas I imagine someone that's perhaps, half my age, like Ash. I mean, Ash is probably not the best example because you're not really a Naughty Dog fan. But that could be more appealing to someone, younger, just because it's stuff that they haven't seen before, perhaps.
Well, I mean, look at how many kids probably have Fortnite in their top 3 games.
That's a point. It's a point, isn't it?
I think it's just a case of like personal taste. I realized a really long time ago that I was never going to be able to play every single game, and I wasn't going to enjoy every game that I did play. So I'm really picky with what I play, but that means that I tend to like it more. Mm-hmm. So more of the modern games that I play, because I know I don't really like retro games, are going to be games that I like.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm not a fan of many retro games as much as I go on about retro stuff. But yeah, the nostalgia is too heavy, I think, in many cases, and Bill might disagree with me here. But there's actually not that many good retro games. A lot of them are actually just bad because they're old. There's in the scheme of how many games were made back in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, not that.
Things haven't
not many
changed.
Of them are good.
It's still just as much 50-50 back then as what it is now. It's just that you played what you had and you made the most of what you've got. You don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
With how cheap games are and how much choice that you have.
Yeah, like the free to play models and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really difficult question, and one that we probably need an hour and a half just to talk about that on its own.
We've got time. Iconic says Naughty Dog games are incredible to look at, but just something you just want to throw away. They are quite disposable, aren't they? As good as they are, they're great while you play through. It's like I loved Uncharted 4. I thought that was absolutely incredible. Just completely unrealistic escapism. It was just great fun, Indiana Jones-esque and all of that. But once I finished it, that was it. I was done. It was just nice while I had it, but I'll probably never ever go back to it at all.
I'm 50-50 with them as well. Like, I like Crash. The original Crash trilogy was Naughty Dog. I haven't played. Is it Jak and Daxter? Mm-hmm. What they did as well. I haven't played any of those yet, so I can't make a decision on those. Uncharted, I didn't really think. I always preferred Tomb Raider over Uncharted. I understand why people liked it, but it wasn't for me. But I thought Last of Us. I haven't played the second one yet, but the first one was really, really good. I just think it depends on what they're going for and whether it's in a world that you can attach yourself to, rather than anything else.
All right then. Let's move on to the next question. We've actually only got 2 questions left. Bill has an industry question. Is too much money?
Not nearly as fun as the question you've had, John. I'm really sorry.
Is too much money spent on video game marketing?
Yes.
In which way? As in, do we see too much of a game? Does it spoil the game? Is that your point, or what's the point of the question?
Shall I clarify and give a bit more, or Ash, did you want to go straight into it?
I mean, I'm gonna say yes, no matter what you clarify it as, because I think too much money goes into marketing games that are going to sell anyway, whereas not enough is put into games that really need it. So, for example, FIFA 21 is going to sell no matter what because it's going to be bought by people that buy every single FIFA game. Things like Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to sell really well because it was going to be bought by people that have a lot of love for Final Fantasy VII. But a game like, say, an indie game like Stardew Valley, while that was really popular and is a bad example, an indie game like that might not sell as well because they don't have as much money put towards it. So I think yes, and that's also how you end up with things like The Last Guardian, where people get too hyped about it because they see all the marketing and they're like, oh my god, it's going to be great, and then it's pure garbo.
I waited far too long for The Last Guardian, and I bought it just because I felt like I had to, because I'd waited for it for so long, because Ico, or Eco, however you pronounce it, Ico is one of my top favourite games of all time, and Shadow of the Colossus as well. And so the last guy, and I was like, right, this game can't possibly be bad in any possible way.
Right.
After waiting so long, it's had so much development. It's going to be absolutely perfect. I bought it and it was crap. It really wasn't good at all. As much as that crazy bird, dog, cat thing was, very nice to look at. That was a real letdown. In terms of the financial side and how much money is spent on marketing, I don't think there's anything wrong with a company marketing a game too much, but it does sometimes feel that, if a game is just everywhere, for me that can be quite off-putting, because it's like saying everyone needs to play this, you must play this, you must think that this game is great, and you must buy this game, and that's off-putting to me, I would say.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with this question. And Ash, I completely agree with you. My answer is yes. However, it's more of a grey area when you go into the things that John was talking about. I've never picked up a Call of Duty game, not because it's solely the biggest game and I'm just one of those contrarians that don't want to play what everyone else is playing. It's just that I can never get away from it. So in game, when we worked, we couldn't get away from it because that was the only thing that you could advertise on every top shelf was Call of Duty.
That's a good point, Bill. I think my time working in games retail, and to an extent working in a cinema, managing a cinema as well, it really did put me off a lot of genres and a lot of types of things because I was just so sick of it. It must be like working at McDonald's and then going out for a Big Mac after work. It's like you probably don't want to do that. But yeah, it's like
right.
It was all just COD, wasn't it? It was just COD, FIFA, COD, FIFA, COD, FIFA, and I'm done with it.
Yeah, that's right. And that put me. And the same thing happened with Assassin's Creed. I used to buy all the Assassin's Creed, and then suddenly, before I know it, I was working Assassin's Creed. I was playing Assassin's Creed. If I went on YouTube, my videos get interrupted by Assassin's Creed. I open a magazine, it's on the front cover and it's Assassin's Creed. There's just so much goes into it that it puts me off. But the other sides of it is now I know Call of Duty and Battlefield are always competing with one another. So the other side of the argument is if they don't advertise as much as they do and shout about it as much as they do, they will lose their market share because those two games are so similar and constantly arguing. And the one time that Call of Duty didn't advertise, Battlefield came out on top.
That's true.
Because there was that shift. Because that Battlefield went full hog with all their... It was in cinemas, it was on the side of buses. Battlefield 3, I think, wasn't it, John?
I believe it was. It was Battlefield 3 was when it got good, wasn't it?
With their big at the beginning of everything they did. And they actually took market share from Call of Duty, so now they fire back. But again, it's like with the amount of YouTube Let's Plays and things that we, people like us, we sort of play these games for these people. Are they doing damage to their product by advertising as much as they do when they could really let us pick up the slack? And we could play the games we like. Like you say, Ash, with the indie games, I think there's a lot of people who buy indie games because, I found that on YouTube, or saw my favourite YouTuber play that on YouTube. That looks pretty good. I'll give it a go. I've picked up games like The Messenger on the Switch, which I never would have touched. But because one of my favourite YouTubers had actually played it, he did the marketing for me, and I bought it, where they never would have picked it up.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the main things that puts me off playing a game, and not even just playing a game, but like watching anime or reading a particular book, is if everyone in my friendship group goes, Ash, you should play this. If like people in my social circle or people at work are like, oh, you need to play this game, it's so good, it's so great, and then they don't give me a reason why. Which sometimes I find you get from YouTubers as well. They'll be like, oh, I'm playing Bendy and the Ink Machine today and it's great and you should buy it. And then they'll do their playthrough but not point out any of the bits that they liked. And that kind of puts me off. And it totally sounds like, oh, Ash just doesn't like things because it's popular, like you say. But it's not that. And I guess it a lot with anime as well. Like, people always say you should watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Ash. And I go, no, I don't like the art style, convince me. And they go, oh, you'll just really enjoy it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch that. And it's the same with games.
It is more than that. Yeah. We've got one last question. Ash, would you like to shout out your question?
Yes. So my question is, what was the last book you read? Sell it to me, because I am creatively bankrupt when it comes to questions.
I last read.
I remember, Ash, you said, we won't run out of questions, we've got loads of topics.
No, it's me that's run out of questions. It's because I've spent so long thinking of stuff for like YouTube videos that I've answered all of my own questions already.
You have. Yes, Jeff.
It's not a book or a novel that I've been reading, but I have been reading the accompanying booklets that have come with my recently purchased set of Star Trek ships.
Cool.
Wow.
Why? What information is in there that you don't already know from watching the show?
None, but the nostalgia is very strong. So basically, as part of moving house, I had to buy some new decorative things on top of all the boring things like washing machines and dishwashers and things like that. So I bought these. What make are they now? I've got them somewhere in there. I can't quite see them from here. They're a brand called Eagle Moss. And they make model ships from all sorts of different sci-fi series. And so I bought myself 6 or 7 little Star Trek ships. Like basically every main ship from all of the mainline Star Trek series. But they all come with like a little information book that's all the technical specifications of all of the ships and things like Deep Space Nine and stuff like that. It is very nerdy, very technical, but I love it. And so I've been reading through all of those. Bill, have I confused you? Sorry.
I didn't even know you liked Star Trek.
How could you not know?
I didn't know. He's never mentioned it ever.
Oh my god. Hang on.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not. He's never ever mentioned it. I love Star Trek, but he's never ever mentioned it.
Him and Emily used to do like a sci-fi show, and it was literally like Star Trek. Or
Really?
The Expanse. That was on there as well, I believe.
Yes, Expanse, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no,
But yeah, they're. I don't know if I can really show it here. They do these things here. These are all like proper, like
What's that?
This particular one is from is Voyager, but
Oh, okay, it's
yeah.
the ship.
But I've.
Sorry, there's a
but
reflection on your
there's
camera.
about like 200 of them. They're only about sort of that big, but they do them in all different sizes and stuff as well. I've just wrecked my shelf, taking all my boxes off as well. That's a bit annoying.
I do want to get a Voyager for my shelf, but I haven't got round to doing it
I'll
yet.
send you a link, mate. They're about 20 quid each, these little models. But yeah, they're really good.
Oh, awesome.
And yes, we did Sci-Fi Sundays, didn't we? We should definitely bring a Sci-Fi Sunday back at some point. As like we only did like 3 of them, I think.
I'll have to check those out. I didn't realise you even had that on the channel. I must have missed those
I think
completely.
they might have been Twitch only, actually, to be fair, because that was during lockdown 1.0, where I was in my old spare bedroom.
Shall I go now?
Yes, go on. Sorry, Bill. Carry on.
Well, so I'm not lying to you. The last book I read was my own because I'm editing it ready for a launch. But not to turn this into something about mine. I'll talk about that hopefully in the future.
Bill. I've
The last
written a
proper
book, have I? Great. So have
Well,
I, Bill. Everyone's written a book.
That's true, yes. And you need to give me yours because I'm a Patreon.
That's true, actually.
The last proper book series that's published by professionals that I done was the Mass Effect trilogy, and I read them back to back. Now, you said sell them to you, Ash. Now, I know you're not a Mass Effect fan, so this is probably going to be a really hard sell.
I like Mass Effect. I just like the Mass Effect that no one else likes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Well, the first book in the series actually covers the villain. Where are we there? And actually makes him more three-dimensional because you don't have too much time for him in the game. So it actually talks about how he became the villain, why he should be feared, how ruthless he is, and also David Anderson, who's the general that you take the ship over. It also gives a lot of his backstory as well. So when you actually play the game, those two characters have a lot more meaning to you and why they're a big deal than if you went in blind. So that's it. It's a slower burn, but it does make the game better from the beginning hours as a result. So that's number one. Number two goes into the Quarians, which are the guys with the mask, and actually talks about how they turned out the way they did, how difficult their lives are in space, because obviously they can't land on the planet. because their planet's lost. Not spoilers, it's a 10-year-old game. And also starts bringing in one of the other characters, I forget her name, Kaylee, with an H, Kahlee, who is introduced in this book as like one of the main story characters, and kind of seems insignificant at this point, but you live the world of Mass Effect through her eyes. And this is also like the events between 1 and 2, so you get a couple of glimpses from that. So that's quite interesting from that sort of point of view. And then the final one, it wraps up just before the events start of Mass Effect 3, and actually tells you what it's like turning into a Reaper, because the guy on the front cover is actually indoctrinated and he starts turning into a Reaper. And Kaylee Saunders, that starts in number 2, actually appears in number 3 as a side character, and you wouldn't even know who she is or whether she's that big a deal when you play the game. But when you read the book and then meet her in the game, that's actually the end of her story, and it actually means a lot more. And the whole, a lot of people who say the indoctrination theory is a load of rubbish and you're just looking for ways to make the ending of 3 better. When you read these books and you find out what it's like to be indoctrinated and turned into a Reaper, it actually makes it more easily digestible, as if there is a possibility. So the other books in the series, not so much. The comics are pretty good, I have to say, but they're more extensions of characters that you already know enough about. But the books themselves, these 3 books in the series, actually fill in lots of plot holes they don't have time for in the games.
They actually sound really interesting.
There you go.
I'd also like to point out that I think me and Mistress Puff have pretty similar reading tastes, because I have read the first book in the Redwall series, which I believe they said they were about to start, and I asked for a couple of the Disney villain books for Christmas. My mum got me, I think, 4 of them, which is interesting because I enjoy hearing people and their book tastes.
She's got loads of the Dragon Age books as well, so if you want to have that conversation with her, then she'll be up for that.
See, this leads me into my next question, which is actually a question directly aimed at John. If I can arrange it, 1 day a month, can I do a book club on Twitch? And would anyone in the chat be up for it?
Yes and yes.
I'll nominate Sarah, Mistress Puff, for that one.
There you go. New feature coming up soon.